Oh, damn it. I am letting everybody know. And of course, as soon as I move my phone, the Photos app pops up. Hello, everybody. Nobody is here yet, but hello, anybody. I'm sure people will join and watch eventually, as has been the case. So let us do what I'm here to do, and that is take a look at the main slate today. In lieu of writing, I will just use my mouth words instead of my finger words. So, game one, fun. Mets Marlins. We have Jacob DeGrom and Sandy Alcantara going against one another. This is, let's get this updated here. It's the 11th. All right. Perfect. Okay. So I have everything up that I need. We're looking at the last 14 days for all of these pitchers, and that'll help us to see who's hot and who's not over their last couple starts, just like I look at batters over the last 7 days. And I already have that in, but I want to give specifics when I talk about the pitchers. So this, like the last couple slates, the afternoon one and last night's slate is pretty weak on pitching. This one has much more than the other slates, but it's still pretty slim pickings. So, this first game is great because it has an obvious slam dunk pitcher, even though he is the most expensive, Jacob DeGrom. Jacob DeGrom against the Marlins is the free square. The Marlins are projected to get 2.3 runs. 2.3 runs, that's no runs. Jacob DeGrom is far and away the best pitcher on the slate today. It's just that easy. And then Sandy Alcantara, I want to give you these stats. Over his last couple of weeks, he has a K9 of 5.2, terrible. He has walked 7.8 people per 9 innings. That is ridiculous. His whip is 1.94. That's terrible. His FIP, 8.35. His XFIP is 6.55. His Sierra, 7.15. Sandy Alcantara is a mess. We see the Mets, who have been cold as ice. I didn't even recommend them yesterday. Have been cold as ice. They heated up. I said that it was a get right spot for them, and they got right. And I would assume they'll be able to continue to carry that on today against Sandy Alcantara, who has been absolutely awful. So that should be, the Mets don't have the highest projected total on the slate, but they're still high enough that I would take a chance on some of the bats here. If you look, none of them have been hot as I would classify them, except for McNeil. So he would be the first one that I start off with, assuming he's leading off. But other than that, you really can't go wrong starting from the top of the lineup. The only person who I really don't want to play is Todd Frazier, assuming Todd Frazier starts. He is really, his swings are legendary in terms of how hot he is when he gets hot and how bad he is when he gets cold. And he is cold. And until he gets hot, I'm going absolutely nowhere near him. I'm just going to check if any new lineups came out. Not yet. Okay, so next, that was pretty easy. The next game is the Phillies and the Royals. We have a hot pitcher in Zach Eflin versus a really cold pitcher in Brad Keller. Let's take a look here. So Eflin hasn't been striking people out. His K9 has been 4.5, but he is not walking anybody, and his whip is 0.81. The ERA, which isn't as good as his other stats, is 1.13, although his FIP is 3.31 and his XFIP is 5.28, showing that it's not necessarily as good as he's been pitching, but this is a good spot for him, and hopefully he'd be able to increase his strikeout upside. Let's see where the Royals sit. Currently, they are just in the middle of the pack, and the Yankees lineup is confirmed. That's 6-10. I skipped that because that's not on the main slate. Looks like it's pretty much exactly what I had, and they're going against Stanek and then Chirinos, I believe. So that's, just stay away from that kind of bullpen game. Yeah, Kansas City's 12th in terms of strikeouts per game, so they're okay. Zach Eflin is not a great pitcher for today. His strikeout upside isn't as high as a lot of the other pitchers, and 8,500 is, I don't know. I don't want to pay 8,500 for Eflin when I can just go 1,000 more and get some really significantly better pitchers, or go 2,000 more and downgrade some bats. So Eflin is good. He's been in good form, not as good as it looks like he's been, but compared to a lot of the other pitchers that we've seen lately, he looks like an ace. And then we have Brad Keller, who is pretty much the exact opposite. Where is he? Keller has struck out 6.1 per nine. He's walked 7 per nine in his last couple starts for a whip of 1.94, which is absolute dog shit. And his FIP is 4.38 and his xFIP is 5.46, even though his ERA is 6.10, showing that he's pitched slightly better than he's gotten credit for, but it's still really, really terrible. And as I've talked about many, many times, this is a Phillies team that will just kill you from 1 to 8, and now they have a DH, so that's 1 to 9. So I will absolutely take a shot on some Phillies bats today. Brad Keller has been doing that poorly, and I have no problem riding with them. They're not one of my favorites by any stretch. I think there are a couple other stacks that I would like better than them. I do like the Mets better than them. Against Alcantara, he's just been so terrible. But I think the Phillies are in a fantastic spot. Not as fantastic as these next two teams. I want to see, did Vegas total come out on this yet? On the second game of the doubleheader? Oh, yeah. The Twins are projected to get 5.6 runs. That is absolutely incredible. Yeah, so we have Gregory Soto for the Tigers. Who's that? Nobody. He's here because it's a second game of a doubleheader and they need him. Ooh, and the Reds lineup just popped. That is really late, though, isn't it? Yeah, that's 9 o'clock, so I'll get there eventually. Greg Soto is only here to pitch the second game of a doubleheader. Otherwise, he wouldn't have a job. And the Twins are a hot team that are going to absolutely destroy him. And they are generally underpriced for the total that they have here. It looks like a Coors Field game for the most part. So that is a fantastic, fantastic play. And I also want to point out that the Tigers only have a total of like 3.9, depending on how you round it. Cole Stewart is terrible, like not bad. He's terrible. So I think that it's a lot sneakier to take a Tiger stack here, especially given the pricing. You are going to be able to take a couple of the more expensive pitchers and still maintain a full stack of 4 or 5 people. They are all really that cheap. And they are all going against that bad a pitcher, even if Vegas doesn't think so at this point. I think that's absolutely crazy. There's absolutely no way I'm not going to try to stack as much as I can against Greg Soto or Cole Stewart. They are both absolutely terrible. If you look at who's hot and who isn't, Goodrum is going to be out, so that's irrelevant. Grainer should get the start of the second game because Hicks got the start in game 1. So he's cold, so I wouldn't play him. And Candelario, if he gets the start again, has been cold. The two people that have been hitting really well in the Tigers lineup are Miggy Cabrera and Ronnie Rodriguez. And Ronnie Rodriguez already has a home run in the first game. So he has lived up to that. Who else? There was also another home run hit in the first game. Who hit that? Ronnie Rodriguez and Dixon. But we'll see if Dixon plays. He is DHing, so it's certainly possible that Miggy Cabrera moves to DH or gets off and Dixon plays first base. We'll have to see. It's going to be a while before this lineup comes out. I expect most of the other lineups to trickle out while I'm doing this video, which is why I chose to do it at 3 o'clock. But we're not going to know that until this game is over and then maybe a half hour after that. So that's going to be 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock. And the Mets lineup is popped. So let's finish this game up and then I'll go back and look at that. And then on the Twins, Kepler is the only person who's been cold. And we have Polanco, CJ Cron, and Mitch Garver, who have been absolutely on fire. the other catcher started, Castro started the first game of the doubleheader, so Garver should get the second game. And again, he is an extreme reverse splits guy, so it's not as good that he's going against a lefty, but I will absolutely take any shares of him that I can. He is going to be one of the best catching options on this small slate tonight. So yeah, I'm trying to take as many bets as I can from this. The Twins are obviously in a better spot, but they are also, like $1,000 more expensive, at least per person. So I think it's perfectly feasible if you want to get in a DeGrom and another expensive pitcher. And I'll get to a couple really good pitching options that you go with Detroit instead of Minnesota, or go heavier on Detroit and still try to fit in some Minnesota bats when we see which ones those are. Because, I know there's a Coors Field game and that's where a lot of the ownership is going to go, but those two spots are absolutely fantastic. And I am going to try to load up on that game as much as possible. I think as well, most people assume that the both games of a doubleheader aren't going to be on both slates, because it very rarely is. I don't recall the last time an early game and a late game were on two different slates. Normally they only pick one. So I really don't know how people are going to handle it in terms of ownership. I think it's going to be ignored to a large degree. So I'm going to be all up in the Twins and the Tigers. I want to stack them as my first and second team in whatever order. So let's move back to the Mets, because that is going to matter. They're a team I'm interested in. And the Vegas total has changed to 7. So now the Mets are 4.5 runs and the Marlins are 2.5 runs, which is still terrible for the Marlins. The Mets are almost minus 300, which again, if you watch my last video, over minus 200 is crazy. Getting anywhere near 300 is ridiculous. And we have the Mets and the Astros both knocking on that doorstep. So it looks like Frazier is still out and they do not have Lowry back. It is the same lineup, it looks like, from yesterday. So we do not have the same lineup from yesterday. Hello, Grace. How you doing? Welcome. How you doing today? So we got McNeil, JD Davis batting second, which is a sneaky third base play for 3,900. Then we got Cano, Alonso, Conforto, Rosario batting sixth, Nimmo down to 7, and then Nido is going to be catching tonight instead of Wilson Ramos, who looked like he was finally starting to get right yesterday, which is unfortunate for him. So I would be, again, interested in anybody. JD Davis hit the ball really hard yesterday. He has been cold as ice, but if he is starting to get his bat back, that's basically what he's the best for. If he's starting to get his bat back, then sign me up for that, because I think he's going to be someone that we are going to get at low ownership again against Sandy Alcantara, who is one of the worst pitchers on this little tiny slate. So we got Rosario, who is batting sixth, and then it's Nimmo and Nido. Excuse me. And that is the Mets lineup confirmed. Okay, so that is, it's not a boost or decrease to Alcantara because you're not going to play him. It just changes who the priorities are when you're looking at the Mets, because it really certainly does move Davis into it. And maybe now we use McNeil as an outfielder instead of a third baseman, because now we have Davis as a third baseman as well, and that's also going to make it difficult on FanDuel with both of them being third basemen. So you'll either have to use a util slot or pick one if you want to stack the Mets. But again, this is one of the best stacks of the day. I don't care what the total is. I don't like them as much as the Twins and the Tigers. Don't get me wrong. I don't like them as much as Coors Field, but I'll see. We'll see what I can do with that. I'm not sure how much time I'm going to have. I'm already almost 15 minutes in, and I have my wife and my son upstairs waiting for me. But I will talk about the picks that I like the best for a GPP lineup. So let's move on to the next game I have, which is Atlanta and Arizona. Let me get the lineup page up too, so that we see if anything updates. All right, next up is the Braves and the Diamondbacks. This is two pitchers that have been pretty dog shit awful. over the last 2 weeks, the last few starts. Let's look specifically here. We have Gosman, who's had a good strikeout upside. He's almost 10, but he's walked about 6 per 9, which is terrible. Whip of 1.82, which is terrible. And although his ERA is 7.36, which is really awful, his FIP is 4.30 and his xFIP is 5.14, which is still awful, but not as awful as his ERA seems to indicate. Thank you very much, Deepow. I really appreciate it. So with Gossman, he's a hit or miss guy. I'm not a big fan of trying to take the hit on him against the Diamondbacks. And then Merrill Kelly, I've talked about in great detail. He's like a poor man's Miles Mikolas. He is not a strikeout pitcher. He's someone who relies on what they would like to think is exquisite control. He's older than you would normally expect someone to for them to make their debut, and he's pitched pretty terribly over the last stretch. He has a K9 of 3.8, which is awful. He's walking 4.8, which is someone that's not showing a good amount of control, and then a WHIP again 1.82, and my son is knocking on the door, and his FIP and his xFIP are 6.98 and 6.58, which is absolutely awful. That means that he's going to be one of the worst pitchers on the slate. So even though the Braves have not been hitting very well, the Braves are still going to be one of the better stacks. Again, Twins and Tigers are going to be my favorite. Coors Field is going to be fantastic. But Merrill Kelly has looked absolutely awful. And I think that this would be a good get-right spot for the Braves. Similarly, the Diamondbacks have a few hot players, Peralta, Marte, and then I would assume Carson Kelly gets the start at catcher. He's been on fire as well lately. So if you want to work in, a Christian Walker or Eduardo Escobar in there, I think I would be a big fan of that. This is one of those small slates where I would play it by having a very small pool of pitchers and then trying to spread that amongst a bunch of different stacks. I would try to hold on one second, folks. I'm going to mute that. There we go. Someone who's watching, please tell me if you can hear me now. Okay. The green thing is moving. I don't know why my son is knocking because my wife is literally right next to him. He probably just wants me to come upstairs. Oh, I love him so much. I love him so goddamn much. So again, this is a game where I'm going to focus more on the bats than I'm going to focus on the pitchers. I don't even want to really take a chance on them in GPP, although I can understand if you feel like you're going to go to Gossman there. It's just, 7,800 is cheap for someone with upside, but both these teams are projected to get like 5 runs, so I'm just not going to go there. Next up is Lucchesi and Gray for the Padres and the Rockies, respectively. Again, another game where we have offense that we need to stack, and I am getting messages. I don't know, Kyle. I will have to answer you after I'm done with my video. I guess someone for the Indians got scratched. I'm going to have to investigate that. Let's see. Luplow got put in for Naquin. So that is, absolutely. Absolutely, that is a bump to whoever is in the Cleveland lineup is a great play because Aaron Brooks is terrible. If you're still looking to get people in from the early slate, try to get everybody you can because you have the three best teams on the early slate are all going off at 4:00, the Angels, the Orioles, and the Indians. So if you can load up on them, make sure you do it. Luplow is going to have 0 ownership batting 6th against Aaron Brooks, who's been absolutely god-awful. Yep, that's official now. Luplow is batting 6th. Freeman is moved up to – okay, so they moved Freeman to 7. That's cheap, 2,800 for a dude batting 7th that gets second base and shortstop eligibility. Interesting. So anyway, let's go back to what I'm talking about here, and that is the Coors Field game. The Rockies are projected to get slightly over 5, and the Padres slightly under 5. But I would take the over if I was betting on that, because Lucchesi has looked terrible, as has Gray. I have them both as red. If you look at my lineup page, and the Phillies lineup has popped as well. Have I gotten to them yet? I have. I talked Phillies Royals, so let's make sure that it's the same exact lineup that they always play every day. It's the same exact lineup that they always play every day. McCutchen, Segura, Harper, Hoskins, Real Muto, Herrera, Hernandez, and Franco. We don't have to change anything. I don't have to talk about anything extra. Hooray! Coors Field time. Okay, so we have the Padres, who are playing Lucchesi and John Gray. So if you, I have a thing on Fangraphs set up that shows all of the pitchers that are going on a given day. So it goes by in order of FIP, which is, I could do it by XFIP or whatever, but I like to use FIP as the marker. So there are 34 pitchers that are projected to either start or be the opener. And right now, Lucchesi is 24th and Gray is 25th. And that is really, really terrible. Lucchesi and Gray have both been absolutely dog shit lately. The one saving grace for Gray is his strikeouts are over 11 per 9, but he's walking a ton of people. His whip is almost 2. His ERA is almost 9, even though his xFIP is 3.85, meaning that he is a victim of circumstance. But guess what? He plays in Coors Field. He's going to be a victim of circumstance. Let me make a tangent here, because this is something that really annoys me. We have a lot of people that try to make people feel bad for talking about ERA and talking about other stats. Just because something else comes along that is a better definition or can help you understand something more doesn't mean that everything else is irrelevant. Like, yeah, ERA is a function of how good your defense is and what park you're pitching in and all of this other stuff. But guess what? In the real world, John Gray is pitching with a bad defense behind him in a amazing hitter's park. So we can look at xFIP and all of these neutralized stats all we want, but it doesn't paint a picture of the whole story. There is nothing wrong with looking at everything, because you cannot tell that full story unless you are looking at everything. Sure, ERA is imperfect, but so's xFIP if you're looking at how someone is going to do that day, because you can't ignore the defense behind them. You can't ignore the park conditions, because those are things that are going to affect them that day. Yeah, if they pitched in a different ballpark with a better defense behind them, they would have done better. But guess what? They're not. So why the hell am I going to assume he's going to get a 3.85, all things being equal? Sure, he pitches better than that, all things being even, but he doesn't in the real world, because he has that defense behind him and he pitches in that park. Now, enough of that, because that's just something that bothers me, that people are snobs about statistics when every statistic can teach you something. It's just a question of knowing what is important and what is valuable. So again, let's go back to this game. We have Lucchesi for the Padres. He struck out 7 per 9. That's terrible. Walked 3 per 9. That's terrible. His whip is almost 2 as well, with an ERA of 7, a FIP of 5.45, and an xFIP of almost 6. All of those are awful. And guess what? He's a lefty going into Coors Field. I don't know how many times I have to say this, and I will say it a million times. Anytime a lefty goes into Coors Field, I feel really bad for that lefty, because the bats are going to demolish him. You can lock in Arenado and you can lock in Story. Anytime a lefty comes in, if Reynolds starts at first base, he is far too underpriced. If Iannetta catches, he is underpriced for being a bat in Coors Field against a lefty. I absolutely love this stack, but they are going to be chalky as hell. And I think that you can separate yourself by going to the Twins and the Tigers, or some of the other people that we're going to talk about. Additionally, we keep seeing the Padres. There's something that happens for 95% of the teams that go into Coors Field, and that is that everyone focuses on the Rockies bats and they ignore the other team's bats because they're not as good. But those teams still get a legitimate boost, and the Padres are still drastically underowned and drastically underpriced for the amount of production they're expected to put up. In Coors Field, they're expected to get almost 5 runs. Ian Kinsler is going to lead off again, assumedly, for 3,600. Austin Hedges for 36. Ty France is starting for 4,000. That is fantastic. Anytime. The rule used to be if you can get someone in Coors Field for 4K or under, you try to lock that person in because the odds of them producing are that much greater. And the fact that the Padres might have a leadoff hitter and 2 other dudes at 4K or under is absolutely ludicrous. On top of that, the Rockies are going to have, assumedly, Hampson and Walters. Well, they shouldn't play Walters, but assumedly have Hampson at 3,400, which he was 2,500, I think, yesterday on FanDuel, which is the minimum anyone could be that's playing in Coors Field on FanDuel. Ludicrous. There's way too much value here to ignore. You can get good pitchers and still have good bats in a good environment. So do not ignore this game. When I've talked about the general stacking strategy, and I think it's important to note that you can be flexible. And when you have expensive pitchers that you need to prioritize, when the bottom of the barrel is so empty, so to speak. Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Luke, for watching. I appreciate it. It's my, that's what I'm here for. I think that there's, if you look at the slates yesterday, this afternoon, and this evening, there's very few cheap options, which forces us to spend up at pitcher, which kind of forces our hand at taking a different strategy to bats. I don't mind doing like a 3-3-2 or something along those lines, a 3-2-2-1. I try to make sure that I keep batters together that would have some kind of effect on one another. So, a dude that can hit another dude in is preferable because we want it to have an additive effect. That's the point of stacking in the first place. So I wouldn't mind doing that. Just know that you're not going to get as much value, but you're going to make up for that with a pitcher that has a much higher upside than anybody else at the bottom of the barrel today. So I also want to point out one last thing before I move on to the next game, and that is that if you look into it, John Gray is a Coors Field pitcher that doesn't show home and away splits. The stuff that he has isn't affected as much as other pitchers would be in Coors Field. So he's someone that if he has a good game, he's going to have a good game. If his stuff is working, it's going to work. In that regard, he's kind of always a GPP play because it doesn't matter what ballpark he's in and what opponent he goes against. He can get you 12 strikeouts in 7 innings and give you 0 runs against anybody, anytime. The odds of him being on that day are just significantly less than someone else who pitches like that, like a Masahiro Tanaka. Where you don't know exactly how they're going to be today. It's dependent on how they feel, more so than the opponent or the park factor. So we have Gray with almost no home road splits. So we don't have to downgrade him for Coors Field as much as we would other pitchers, just, the general amount we would downgrade anybody for pitching in Coors Field. But it's still absolutely fantastic to take the Padres today. They're going to go under-owned and they are underpriced. So let's see what I have next. Next up is Texas and Houston. That is Drew Smyly, well, kind of, and Garrett Cole. So I think Chavez is opening for them. Yeah, Chavez is opening for Texas. I guess he'll get an inning or two. His FIP over the last few weeks has been 9.55. That's not good for them. I don't even know why they would buy. See, the point of bringing in an opener is the same reason that you bring in a closer. You want to get someone that will guarantee you out. So the reason they've started bringing openers in philosophically is because people have started stacking the top of their lineup. It used to be that the 3, 4, and 5 hitters were the meat of the lineup, so to speak. But we've seen a move towards, a more sabermetric use of hitters, where the 1, the 2, and the 3 are the 3 best hitters. And because of that, we are seeing them try to use one pitcher to get those 3 guys out, so your starter can start with the 4 hitter as their leadoff hitter, and then when they work their 5 or 6 innings, they only have to face the 1, 2, 3 twice if they're pitching well. It's a much better method for starting pitchers, as frustrating as hell as it is for us. But that's predicated on the fact that the person you're using to open is an absolute dog shit like Jesse Chavez is. So, I mean, they're bringing in not Drew Smiley, who's been terrible, so that they can have Jesse Chavez. It just doesn't make any sense. Smiley has been pitching decently, but I'm going to give the same warning that I gave about Lucchesi, which is when you see a lefty going into Houston, watch the hell out, because they are in a lot of trouble. Hey, Mitchell, any chance for a list? Well, that's what I'm trying to do here, Mitchell. I apologize. I have my family time today. So I got the main Slate stuff out, but I wasn't able to write up this stuff. So I'm trying to go through everything now. And then at the end of the video, I can do a list, which is what I planned on doing anyway, where I'll give my favorites in order for pitchers and for stacks, and then like my home run call of the day. So I apologize that it's not going to be in the written format, but I hope that you can, go to the last like 10 minutes of the video later on if you can't mess it up, if you can't manage to watch this whole thing now. But I apologize for being unable to do that. And I apologize for what you're going through. Thank you for everything you've done for us. Really, nothing that I'm talking about matters as much as what you've done. So thank you very much. It pales in comparison to Matt Harvey and how shitty he is. But still, that's why I'm here, and that's why you guys are watching me. So let's get back to it. Where was I? I was talking about Texas, Houston. And so Smiley has had a K9 of over 11 over his last few starts, which is great. His whip has been 1, which has been great. His ERA has been 2.25, which has been great, but his FIP is 5.37, which means that he's been getting away with a lot of stuff. And I am more prone to believe that that's luck than a function of like a bad D or something like that. Whereas over a larger sample size, we've seen the same thing from Coors Field pitching, whereas we have not seen Drew Smiley be successful. We've seen him pitch more like a pitcher that should have an ERA of 5.37 than one that's going to have one around 2. So again, a left-handed pitcher going into Houston is a terrible thing. They are one of the best lineups in baseball against lefties, hands down. That top of that lineup is absolutely disgusting, and they are, as much as I've said this, they are a fantastic stack. I think they are the highest projected team total tonight. I think they just beat out Minnesota, if I'm looking. Yep, they just beat out Minnesota. 5.8 for Houston, 5.6 for Minnesota. So, they're using a terrible Jesse Chavez to open, and then a terrible Drew Smiley next. And then their bullpen is just as bad as all of that. There's a reason that the Astros are 2.5 run favorites. The Astros, if you took off what the Marlins are projected to get from what the Astros are projected to get, you still don't have what the Rangers are projected to get. Like, the Astros would still beat the Rangers if you subtracted the entirety of the Marlins. Or I guess, to put it another way, if you added what the Rangers and the Marlins are supposed to do today, you still don't have what the Astros are supposed to do today. So again, even though Coors Field is fantastic, they have a bunch of shitty pitchers going in to Houston, and they are hot as well. If you look at my lineups page, and again, I really strongly suggest you do, because I do splits and I do who's hot and who isn't over the last 7 days. There are 0 cold players on Houston, and we have Springer, Bregman, Brantley, Correa, Gurriel, and Chirinos, all with an OPS over 1,000 or a WOBA over, 390. I set the benchmark at. So I'm feeling much better. It still hurts a lot, but I'm back to like the normal amount of hurting. as opposed to how bad it was when I fell. I can sit up again, which is, that was a tough week and a half. So yeah, the Astros are the hottest team offensively, I would say, in the game if you look at just the lineup from top to bottom. So sign me up for the Astros. I think they'll be popular again, so it makes sense to pivot to the Twins or the Tigers. Again, the second game of doubleheader will go overlooked, but the Astros are probably far and away the best play today. And then it's certainly possible that Garrett Cole is the best pitcher. On the late slate, I think DeGrom gets the bump because of the matchup. The Rangers are expected to score almost a full run more than the Marlins, but Garrett Cole has a K9 of 13.5. He's walked a bunch, but his whip is still 0.83 with an ERA of 2.7. And this is the best part. His FIP 2.75 and his XFIP 2.46, meaning that the 2.70 ERA is too high for actually how well he's been pitching. So Garrett Cole is in a fantastic spot. If there's any way you can do a DeGrom Garrett Cole, do it, because those two should be far and away the highest scoring pitchers on the day. I love them both, but I can understand picking one and then getting to another pitcher that I'm going to talk about now, because my favorite pitcher on the slate is not either of DeGrom or Cole. It is Anthony DeSclafani. If you look at Anthony DeSclafani over the last couple of weeks, over his last few starts, a K9 of 12.4, walking 2 per 9, a whip of 0.92, an ERA of 1.38 with a FIP of 2.43. His XFIP is 3.86, which is a little higher, but it's the Reds. And I'll take that for much cheaper. Excuse me. Right now, you have DeSclafani. You can get him at 9,200, which no one is going to pay, because no one wants to pay that much for DeSclafani. They would rather pay up for good reason, or take Walker Buehler at 9,500, or go down to Eflin, which, like I said, I think is a mistake. But DeSclafani is going against the second worst offense in baseball that's missing Buster Posey. He's going to be out. Panic has been terrible lately. Duggar, Voit, Longoria, it's just, I am not worried at all. Pilar has been terrible lately. I am not at all worried about this Giants team. They are projected to get the second fewest runs today, and DeSclafani is just far underpriced for his recent form. If you just look at DKP alone, his last four starts, 23.9, 26.4, 24.7, 21.7. His last four starts. That is consistent. One of those was against the Cardinals. One of those against the Mets. Those are not jokes in terms of offense. And then the last one was against San Francisco, where he got the 23.9, got up to 95 pitches, still gave up 3 earned runs, still wound up with 24 because he struck out 8 in his 6 innings. So DeSclafani is my favorite pitching play of the day today, all things considered. I have absolutely no problem whatsoever locking him in and then taking either DeGrom, Cole, or Scherzer as a second option. Like I said, the bottom of the barrel here is pretty awful, so it's pretty much going to be find value where you can, and there's just not a tremendous amount of value out there in terms of pitching. So I think that DeSclafani and one of the top tier pitchers, again, Scherzer, Cole, or DeGrom, and then fitting in the bats that you can is going to be the way to go. So let us move on here to the Giants. We have Samardzija. Excuse me. Samardzija has been worse than John Gray. He's 26th, if you remember what I talked about before. 4.5 K through 9, meaning we can't use him at all. He hasn't walked anybody, though. He has a 0.9 walk rate with a 0.8 whip, but here's the problem. that the 3.6 ERA is masked by a 6.32 FIP. Samardzija has been getting incredibly lucky. His BABIP is 138 over his last couple of starts, and that is non-sustainable. He's not striking people out. He's letting people make contact. He does not have that grit of defense behind him. Eventually, those balls are going to find the gaps, and he is going to get absolutely destroyed. I would take the bet that it's going to come today against a Reds team that has been faring really fantastically well, minus Joey Votto and Tucker Barnhart. The Marlins lineup just came out, and I think the Reds lineup came out too earlier, and I said I would touch on it. And it is Senzel, Votto, Suarez, Winker, Puig, Dietrich, Iglesias, DeSclafani, and Barnhart, which is exactly what I had projected. So that doesn't change anything. I will take if you look at who's hot recently, give me Suarez, Winker, Dietrich to start off with. Then I also love Senzel starting off. And then Yasiel Puig is hot and cold, but he's also an extreme reverse splits hitter. So when he's going against a right-hander like Samardzija, sign me up for extra Puig. So the Reds are, again, one of the sneakier GPP stacks today. They're not projected to even get 4 runs, but much like the Tigers, I think that they are going overlooked and underrated based on the pitcher that they're going against. They have been hot, and Samardzija is not good. He doesn't strike out enough people, and if you can't strike people out, you cannot get out of jams that you put yourself in. And if his BABIP is 400 today, he's going to give up 6 runs in an inning, and it's just going to be a terrible, terrible thing for Giants fans all over. Now we have the Marlins lineup that came out, so let's look at that and see if that changes anything, because DeGrom, if it gives a boost to DeGrom, that might put him over the edge. So we have Granderson not playing, which I think is actually worse for him. And we have Martin Prado not playing. Oh, boy. Yeah, this is a boost to DeGrom. This is a serious boost to DeGrom. So we have Rojas leading off, followed by who has been cold, followed by Brian Anderson, who has been awful. Starlin Castro, who's been one of the worst hitters in baseball over the last couple weeks. Neil Walker, the only decent Marlin hitter so far. Really, the only one who's been even remotely decent on the year and over the last couple of weeks. And then we have fill-ins, because that's what you do when you go against the Cy Young Award winner. You have Garrett Cooper, who's terrible, batting 5th. Jorge Alfaro, who has been cold as anything, batting 6th. Oh, man. Harold Ramirez. I know baseball. I have no idea who Harold Ramirez even is. I'm going to assume they just called him up. Either way, he is a shitty righty that plays the outfield, who is not going to do very well against Jacob deGrom. Batting 7th. He's not even batting 8th. And then batting 8th is John Berti, who is also terrible. Oh, boy. Yeah, so definitely this. If you're looking at tiebreakers here, I would expect deGrom to win based on that Marlins lineup. That is disgusting. That is one of the worst individual lineups I've ever seen a baseball team put out. This is one of the worst teams I have ever seen in my entire life, and I've been watching baseball religiously for my entire life. That is pathetic. Jesus Christ. Derek Jeter destroyed that team. If you look at who the Marlins could have had, they had Chris Paddock, they had Louis Castillo, they had, we know Yelich and Ozuna and Stanton in the outfield. The Marlins could be competing for the NL title this year with the talent they had. Instead, they're trying to save money to make money and become a laughing stock in the process. And guess what, Derek Jeter? You became a laughing stock in the process. Last game, Nats and Dodgers. We have Scherzer versus Buehler. Sign me up for the pitchers and only the pitchers here. Max Scherzer has been the best pitcher in baseball over the last couple of weeks. His FIP is 1.04 with a K9 of 12.5. His whip's been a little too high at 1.31, but when you strike out people, that's what I was saying. Conversely, with Samardzija, when you strike out people, you can get out of jams that you let people on base. You can pitch around people that you don't want to pitch to and then strike out really terrible people. And the Dodgers are a lot tougher in offense. And I think that is, a lot more worry and a lot more reason to take a DeGrom, a lot more reason to take a Garrett Cole. But that being said, Scherzer is one of the best pitchers in the game. The only thing that worries me, again, the Dodgers are projected to win by half a run. They almost get 4 runs against Scherzer. Scherzer's not projected to win, which is not good. And that lineup is just nasty. I'm sorry. That is just one of the nastiest lineups and the easily the best lineup in the NL. So Scherzer's been priced down for that, so I think that the risk is factored into the cost, but I think he's going to be really highly owned and more highly owned than he should be given the matchup. So again, I would rather pay up and get DeGrom or Cole, especially with the way that Marlins lineup looks. Oh, man. And then Buehler has been fantastic as well. K9 of 10.2, a walk rate of 0.73 per 9. Awesome. Whip of under 1, 0.97. And then he's someone that's the opposite of a Samardzija. He has an ERA of 4.38, but a FIP of 3.2 and an xFIP of 2.45. So Buehler has pitched absolutely fantastically. And the Nationals strike out more than any team in baseball. So I absolutely love him today. I don't think it would be crazy to take a DeSclafani and a Buehler in order to fit in some other bats. I just think that Buehler does not have the upside because he pitches for the Dodgers. And we all know that Dodgers think that as soon as you get to 100 pitchers, your arm falls off and you can no longer pitch again. I don't know what the hell their philosophy is. Buehler could be throwing a no-hitter in the 6th inning with, one guy out and they'll take him out because he just hit 90 pitches. So, given that, I'm going to go with the other options and spend a little more, but he could easily get 30 DKP today and strike out a whole bunch of Nats. Soto is supposed to be back, and that would be a downgrade to him, but the Nats are supposed to score the 3rd fewest runs, which is great, and he has been in fantastic form. So that is everything. Let's do a list for my friend Mitchell Bradley over here. So my favorite pitcher of the day is DeSclafani. Number 2 would be DeGrom. Number 3 would be Garrett Cole. Number 4 would be Walker Buehler. And number 5 would be Scherzer. Excuse me. Those are the 5 pitchers that I would really consider playing. If you want to go really, I don't even want to go anywhere else in terms of GPP plays. I don't think anyone else is worth the risk. I don't think anyone else has been pitching well enough or is in a good enough position, both on the field or from what Vegas thinks. And then in terms of stacks, that's where it gets tricky because I'm going to do this based on where I think ownership is going to be and what I think the upside is. So first, Twins. Second, Astros. 3rd, Tigers. 4th, Rockies. 5th, Mets. 6th, Braves. 7th, Padres. You know what? Switch that. 6th, Padres. 7th, Braves. 8th, Diamondbacks. That's a lot of bats tonight. So yeah, find the ones that you like that you can fit in. And that's going to be it. I don't have anything else to do. There's no basketball to talk about. So if there's no other questions, thank you all for watching. And I hope someone out here wins tonight. Let's take down a GPP Robe Nation. I love you all. It means the world to me that you watched. And really, thank you so much for asking questions. And I will see you all tomorrow. It'll be, I think it'll be in the afternoon again. It might be in the morning, but I think it'll be in the afternoon again. I like to do it where the lineups come out and I can explain how lineup changes would affect how, the way a pitcher is looked at. So, for example, when the Marlins lineup came out, even though I had DeGrom as high, looking at the way the Marlins lineup is constructed is even better for DeGrom. So, all right. Thank you very much. I love all of you, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Best of luck tonight.